to the meeting of the Executive Cabinet Member, Transport, Highways, Planning and Development. It is Tuesday, the 19th of August. Time has just gone 5 o'clock. I'm Councillor Nadeem Ayub, the Executive Cabinet Member, and on this call we have Council officers and Council members. Okay, first item on the agenda is monitoring of the Executive Cabinet Member decisions. Those have been circulated with the invite. Anything that can come off, Ian?
Yeah, there's one or two items on page 7. There's an item there that can come off. Anything that says completed next to it can come off this next time. So I'll remove those.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody on that? Okay, can't see any hands there. So, okay, moving on to the next item. Item 2, which is the Highways Capital Programme from 26-27 and year-end outturn of the 25-26 programme. Dwayne, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So members will be aware that this is our annual report where we note approval of the previous year's capital programme and delivery. We seek approval of the next year, so 26-27 capital programme delivery. And we also include all the different delivery mechanisms and frameworks within this report just to seek approval. So it just means that when the funding has been granted for or approved for some of these schemes, we can go straight into the procurement and the various frameworks to make sure that we deliver this within year. And it's important to know that a lot of this highways funding is an annual funding, so we do have to spend all of the highways budget within the same financial year. So the report does give a detailed overview of the previous year and delivery, and this is not just roads, this is across all of our highway assets, so it includes bridges, street lighting, retaining walls, drainage, and all of the kind of ancillary highway assets. It is a very detailed report. Members will be aware as well that we took a decision probably about 2 or 3 years ago now to not just seek approval for the next financial year, but to seek approval for the next 7 to 8 years in front. So we've always got that rolling programme, and a lot of those schemes are pre-approved, which gives us a huge advantage, because if any additional funding is awarded via TFGM or the combined authority within year, we've already got those pre-approved schemes that we can just drop straight onto, and we don't need to seek approval for any additional funding that's received in year. I don't think it is, because it's like I said, it's an annual report. The only other thing I probably wanted to bring members' attention to was this is the last year of the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement. You'll be aware that we're in the second kind of like iteration, so 10 years of City Region Sustainable Transport Settlements, and next year we're going to a Transport City Region Settlement, which is a TCR settlement, or Transport for City Regions. So I just wanted to bring members' attention to that, that we're going into a new 5-year from 2027. I've already mentioned the recommendations at the start of the report, so we are seeking approval of the outturn of the previous year, noting and approving the adjustments to the capital programme for 26-27, and the approval to enter into those various delivery agreements. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Dwayne. Okay, open the floor. Any questions on that report from anybody? Councillor Howard.
Thank you very much. So I think I'm going to mostly ask about, I think we call it Table 2. Well, actually, it might be Appendix 2. Let me just double check. I pulled it up so I knew I'd have the right one. Oh, Table 2. No, I was right. So I just need to make sure I understand the business. So there's a paragraph that says, of all the finance, we can have some variability. You know, we can make some choices, and it says, and that's particularly about matters between highways, bridges and street lighting, and then another comment is, or other assets. You know, I think those are the headings. So I thought, looking at the figures, I want you to tell me if I'm getting this right then. So sorry. So I looked at so I'm definitely on table 2, and I've looked at Bolton Council funding, and I've gone for the 3 that start with highways. I've yellow marked those and thought, okay, because I wanted to get a sense for myself of how it looks for those other things, how much money they're getting. And then under GMCA funding, I yellow highlighted just 2 for myself. I put highways maintenance and the CRSTS, and that I kind of got that to be over 1 million, about million, and then 86,000. And then I looked at the figures for things like structures and street lighting. So I sort of summarized, and I thought, and then there is a paragraph about structures and bridges. I've got my second questions on that. Actually, that paragraph does tell me it does actually. I wrote this question before I'd fully finished the document. It does tell me that there really is limited money for bridges and structures. So my assessment is there's quite a bit more money for highways, notably more percentages wise certainly than structures, and probably than street lighting. Have I got that right? By the way, the choices that I made in table 2, I'm getting that right, am I? I'm not missing out massive amounts of other funding for highways.
No, you're right, Councillor. We probably spend 3/4 of the funding on particularly on the carriageway assets and the footways. There is a DFT have a recommended kind of like percentage split. And from memory, I think 14% of our capital programme goes on to bridges and structures, and then the remaining percentage will go on to street lighting, a lower percentage. But bear in mind, it's the safety of our road network, and we have talked to the fact that this is quite a large capital programme compared to previous years. We have got more funding in there. We've got a better settlement because we're at the end of that CRSTS as well. There's bits of underspend and bits of things that some additional funding that we've managed to put in. But so it was just to be able to have that percentage split, and we've talked to the significant backlog, and I've reported over £100 million worth of backlog spend that's required to bring all of our highways up to a safe green kind of like condition. So if we're in a face of £100 million backlog, then it is important, and the DFT do require us to put the majority of the funding into the carriageways.
Yeah, great. That leads me to just another small question now about so it's 2.27 that talks about bridges management and the budget. It actually says it's inadequate in the sentence. So I want to ask you whether you keep reserves, whether you keep a general sort of reserves pot for the whole of your highways transport budgets, or whether you do keep one, say, for something like this. And if there was something that you would describe as urgent, like a collapse or something, can you apply to whether it's Greater Manchester or the government? I'm particularly thinking of bridges because I'm learning. So I thought, what would happen? What finance do we keep finance aside?
So absolutely. So just 2 interesting points on that. So absolutely, if we had a major, bear in mind we undertake annual surveys on all of our structures. So we have a very good, and it does talk to the fact that we have that asset condition. So we have very, very good data on the condition of those assets. But if something did happen, catastrophic to one of those structures, and we had some serious failure, then absolutely we'd be able to reach into the council to make sure that we could undertake emergency repairs. But the second point is that the government through the DFT did announce some structures funding, and it was a significant fund. I think it was £100 million was set aside for bridges across the whole of the country. So we have reached into that, and we've put a submission in for one of our bridges, but it had to be deliverable schemes that had to be delivered within the next 12 months. So we have submitted a bid for that, but it is a bidding process, and there's no guarantees that we will be successful. But we've reached in because we're probably the sentence that you referred to there about it being inadequate is about the fact it's just talking to the same point that there's a backlog. So on bridges as well, there's a backlog of maintenance. So when we undertake these inspections, we'll do the day-to-day maintenance and to keep those bridges safe. But those replacement costs are significant for some of those bridges and structures, and it's retaining walls that we've been seeking additional funding for. We've got quite an extensive retaining wall program at the moment, because those retaining walls, if they're not maintained appropriately, they do hold up the carriageway in some parts, or support the carriageway. So yeah, so it's really important that we maintain those, and that's why we're seeking additional funding, because it's just not the capital budget that we've got just doesn't stretch to do everything that we'd like to do within a calendar year.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. Any further questions? No, can't see any hands up. In that case, for the record, Ian, that report is noted and approved.
Approved as per the recommendations. Okay.
As per the recommendation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Item number 3 is the CRSTS electric vehicle infrastructure procurement. I believe Graham is on there and is going to take us through this report. Over to you, Graham.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm just sharing my screen. There you go. I presume that's come up.
Yep.
So if I just quickly jump into this then. So the purpose of this report today is to present the City Regional Sustainable Transport Settlement electric vehicle infrastructure procurement process, the type of contract that's going to be implemented, and how this procurement will support the delivery of the Bolton transport strategy and EV plan. So if I just jump down to a bit of an introduction and background to the report. So as part of the Council's transport strategy and EV plan, a key barrier to EV ownership is the lack of accessible and affordable charging points, especially for those without access to a driveway. So the project looks to deliver on-street charging points over a 2-year period to 2028, funded via £692,000 worth of CRSTS funding allocated to Bolton for this purpose. The project proposes to appoint a charge point operator to supply, install, operate and maintain EV infrastructure within the CRSTS funding envelope. The route to market will be a competitive, flexible procedure under Procurement Act 2023, and we have undertaken expression of interest stage, which has responded to by 14 suppliers. So we are now at the stage to go out to procurement, and we're therefore seeking approval to do so. So moving on to report details. So under the concessionary contract, the contractor will be required to deliver, design, build, operate and maintain a programme of EV infrastructure delivery. The next few paragraphs within the report does set out the council's responsibilities within that process. So through the post-procurement, design and build and operation and maintenance stages. And then paragraph 2.5 sets out that timeline through to the signing of contract and service provider appointment in March 2027. Options set out in the report, obviously option 1 is the do nothing. Option 2 is the preferred option, the do something, and that is to appoint a contractor via the procurement process to deliver EV infrastructure with the £692,000 available, and that will therefore work towards the aspirations of the Bolton transport strategy and Bolton EV plan. So in terms of impacts and implications, Finance agreed the availability of the £692,000, which is contained within the Highways Capital Programme. Legal support, the procurement approach, and legal and procurement teams are involved and will be involved through the procurement process. Climate change, the project is well aligned with the climate change strategy and the need to reduce carbon emissions from the transport sector. An EIA has been complete and there's been no adverse impacts of the project proposed. Consultation and engagement has been undertaken through the development of the transport strategy around EV infrastructure. However, as part of the programme or the project, further engagement will be undertaken as part of the site selection process. The project's well aligned with the Bolton 2040, and in terms of recommendations, they are set out there in 8.1. I will leave it at that, if that's okay. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Graham. Okay, if you can stop sharing so I can see people's faces, but thank you. And open the floor. Any questions on that report from anybody? Councillor Hayes.
Yes, it's not directly in relation to this report, I suppose, but there is a lot of evidence, I believe, or belief that electric vehicles, because of the weight, cause more damage to the road surface than is currently caused by non-electric vehicles. I'm just wondering whether that's believed to be that's accepted to be the case now, and whether in fact there'll be any adjustments to the overall programme of maintenance to allow for this, if I'm right.
So, Chair, would you mind if I come in on that point?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Graham. It was just to talk to the point that you're absolutely right, Councillor. Electric vehicles are heavier, but we need to bear in mind that we design all of our roads and all of our bridges to 44 tonnes because they're carrying the heavy goods vehicles. So the heavier those heavy goods vehicles get, then that absolutely does have an impact on highway maintenance. But the heavier vehicles or the the electric vehicles being slightly heavier than a normal vehicle doesn't really impact. But it's the buses, and I know there's been a lot of I know they said conspiracy, maybe not conspiracy, but the buses are heavier than normal diesel buses, but they're still not up to that 44-ton weight restriction. It's those very heavy vehicles that do cause the the deformation into the roads. So we're not overly concerned over the heavier cars get. We just need to keep the network moving, because it's the congestion and things like that do have an impact on some of the road condition, but we're not overly concerned about the weights of those electric vehicles at the moment.
Can I just ask if that applies on minor roads as well, where buses and HGVs are rarer?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, Councillor. So there's a standard for road construction. So the standard for road construction is the same, no matter the nature of the road. I mean, traditionally, some of the older rural roads may have a thinner surface because we do have a lot of roads, some of our rural roads that were built before these standards came into force. But we're slowly bringing those up to standard as we go around with maintenance. But yeah, it's the same standard for the design for all roads on the network.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor Howarth.
Thank you very much. Two questions. The first is in terms of some vehicles, they may be longer and wider, but I think you would know this because I've not had time to be clear on this. So I'm thinking of electric minibuses, anything electric that's transit courier vans, e-hybrid vans, and so on. What's the thinking on that? Will it be okay with this infrastructure that you're going to be putting up for charging, EVI infrastructure for charging vehicles in Bolton? I've read the paper. It's to help people who just simply cannot get charging going on where they live because they don't have anywhere to pull a vehicle up in front of their door, that sort of thing, or even at the back. Can anybody help me with that about the vehicles?
I mean, I will start off with the point that the principle behind this is to support those residents who currently don't have a driveway and therefore are limiting or a barrier to EV ownership. So that is the principle, and the focus of this investment will be within those residential areas where there is limited access to off-road parking. So that's the principle behind this. in the context of vans and commercial vehicles, I mean, it probably hasn't been initially envisaged that you know, this infrastructure will be looking to support them. And what I have tended to notice is actually our charging hub on St George's Road, which is run by Zest. Actually, they do seem to have a contract with DPD, so you do tend to see parcel vehicles charging on there of an evening. So, but what we probably will look to do is we'll probably also look to focus probably individual charge points within residential areas, but also some charge points that could be wider accessible to examples of where perhaps commercial vehicles may be able to charge at them as well. But the key principle, as I said, going back to my original point, is that this is a sort of a focus to support residents within Bolton to be able to have EV ownership and overcome some of those barriers.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. I was thinking of some of them, you know, single workers who've got a van and what have you. My next question is about disabled drivers, and I've read the equality impact assessment, and it's really great in there. I'm sure it's in there. It mentions that there's a disabled persons group that's going to be advising, so you know that's being thought about. But it has been raised with me by some residents. Is the council thinking about people who can't walk very far at all, who I thought it's quite a hard one, because they say who would want to have an electric vehicle, but I don't know how this relates to when they have disability cars and so on. I've not checked that out. If they have a concern that they might not be able to walk back from where the offer might be that they would park a vehicle. So when I read the equality impact assessment, I thought there's quite a number of points there about people who are disabled, but it's more about them not having too much difficulty, say, plugging in. It's more about what the actual infrastructure points will be. It didn't really mention distance, so I'd be grateful if that might just be considered, because some will say if the point where I would charge it is too far from my walk back. I thought, well, they're making fair points, but it might be difficult to overcome it. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely, Sue. And obviously, as you've alluded to, the infrastructure that's being delivered does meet disability standards. So that's been tested. Now, in terms of your point around walking distances, well, what a resident can do is obviously apply for a charge point to be located outside of their property within the street. And that's what we can do either through this project, which will be sort of a flat and flush type solution, or we do have other projects as well that looks at sort of cabling, cable gully, and that can also have, you know, meet accessible standards. So the principle is that, you know, we potentially could locate a charge point within the vicinity of the person's property. Obviously, there may be examples of where that is physically impossible to achieve, and therefore we would look to try and have a publicly available charge point, certainly within the vicinity of all, you know, residential properties without access to a driveway. So each individual resident will have, or household will need to be looked at individually when we're doing that site assessment process, but certainly we would look to try and accommodate where we can disability requirements.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ali.
Yeah, obviously I welcome all the charge points and the accessibility that you've considered. On Blackburn Road, we've got a petrol station. It's got the EV access points there, charging points. I'm just wondering, would we be encouraging all the petrol stations to have charging points? in the forecourts?
As part of this report today, this is obviously focused about investing money into residential areas and on-street charging. We certainly would not look to object to commercially, petrol stations putting in their own charge point. That's absolutely fine. And again, it would obviously add to that mix of charging offer across the borough. So it's not something that we would look to object against, but this is not something we would support with the funding that we've got and the report that we're looking to go out to procurement to today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Webb.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not a question as such. I'm just trying to square off the circle in the conversation between Councillor Hayes and Dwayne there, with regards to axle weights on commercial vehicles. Just a little bit of guidance on this one for you all is that part of the change of construction of use from the move from diesel to electric is that for instance, our bin trucks have got 2 axles. Yeah, they're 18 tonners, aren't they, John? If I remember right, they're not 26 tonners, aren't they? So 18-ton diesel has been moved to 19-ton electric, but part and parcel of the changes of construction and uses of having a 10-ton drive axle, they've got an 11.5-ton drive axle. So because of the higher grade of axle, you're not going to dissipate the same amount of weight through the pivot. Imagine a seesaw and you're putting all the weight on the top. So what you wouldn't be doing is overloading one of the axles, whereby you'd be pushing more of that force through the single axle. Because it's got a heavier grade axle underneath it, it'll be better for the road concept going forward. Dwayne says, maximise up to 44 tonne standard construction standard and use. That doesn't equate for your heavy haulage where you're putting 150, 250 tonne across these roads on multiple axles. Obviously, the more axles you've got, the less weight you're going to push through each one of them. But they do have a heavier axle under them, Roger. So you won't be pushing that same force through the load. Just a point, so it could give you some layman's terms around it all, folks.
Thanks. I don't think that, unless anybody wants to respond to that, I think that's just a comment. Thank you. Okay, I can't see anybody else indicating. So therefore, for the record, Ian, that report is noted and approved as per the recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you all. Cheers.
Cheers, thanks. Next item is the deferral of the objections to proposed waiting and unloading restrictions in Runworth Ward. Members will recall that this came to us previously. The majority of that TRO was approved, with part of it, or just this little part that was deferred. I don't know, I can't see Joe Fox on it, so
Dwayne's going to do it.
Yeah, Dwayne will do it. Yeah, no problem. Dwayne, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so as Councillor Webb stated there, members will recall that there was a TRO ward report for Runworth came on the 16th of June, and one of those items was deferred. So this is just a report coming back seeking approval for 2 options that are going to be which are included and presented within this report. So following deferral of the weighting restrictions on Bridgman Street, Goldman Street, Caroline Street and Higher Swan Lane, officers met with all the ward councillors, and there was a disagreement between the ward councillors over which the preferred option would be. So there's 2 options included in this report. There's very minor kind of like differences between those 2 options, and it does state there. If you look at, I mean, there are drawings later on in the report which probably don't show a lot of detail, but if I just draw members' attention on the report to 2.4.2, which is just the slight difference of the length of the yellow lines on Goldman Street. Option 1 is for 9 meters, and then option 2 is for 5 meters. And now obviously just reducing that yellow line, and bear in mind that's close to a junction, it does allow some additional parking closer to that junction if we've got a weighting restriction of 5 metres instead of 9 metres. So it's just going to allow vehicles to park closer to the junction. That's the report really. The report goes on to talk to the costs are all included because they are all included within the ward budgets, and Councillor Iab will be making a decision on one of those two options. Officers haven't put forward a recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Dwayne. Councillor Ali, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that option 2, where the church is on the corner, there's a drop curb. Now, would it not be possible just to put a double yellow line just where that drop curb is? I'm just thinking, if you don't put anything, then, you know, there's a drop curb there. What if somebody parks on that drop curb? And is that not for the hearses to come in and out of the church?
So without looking at a map, I'm not entirely sure what you mean. So when you're talking about a drop curb, is this an entrance into a facility? It's not just a drop curb for pedestrians, it's a drop curb for vehicles?
There's a church on the corner, isn't there?
So I mean, so if we have concerns over vehicles that are parking and blocking an entrance, which is any obstruction on the highway can be enforced by the police, so they shouldn't be causing an obstruction across an entrance anyway. If we do have concerns, so for example, some residential drives, you know, because people have concerns that they can't get out because of parked vehicles, we can use a H-bar marking just across that entrance, which does give us, it means our civil enforcement officers can actually enforce upon that. We don't need the police to support us, but no one should really be obstructing a driveway. But if there's if there has been instances of the church have experienced that, if they want to drop me a line, then I'll quite happily have a conversation with GMP.
Yeah, I just thought that, you know, if even like you say a H-bar or something, you know, you only need one day where somebody parks on there and hearses and, you know, churchgoers can't get in and out of the church. That's all I'm thinking. But yeah, thank you for that. That makes sense.
Thanks.
And
Thanks for that.
I'd just like to say my support's with option 2. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else wanna? No. Okay. In that case, nobody's indicating. Right. As you said, Dwayne, I do have a decision to make. I've got two options. Option 1, which is I think it was 9 meters, and the option 2 was the 5 meters one. The decision that's going to be made today is going to be option 2. Ian, option 2. Just to be clear, option 2.
So that's the recommendations as set out in the report, but option 2 are set out in appendix 2. Okay.
Yeah, correct. Okay, and that is the end of business for today. And again, I just thank you all for joining and hopefully see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Chair.
I'll stop the recording.